everybody, my name is Jeanne Bliss. I coach leaders around the world to help them earn the right to grow by improving customers and employees' lives. Today, we're talking about my book, Would You Do That to Your Mother? How to Grow Your Business by Improving Lives and Honoring the Human at the End of Your Decisions. Stay tuned.
Congratulations! You are tuned into Dov Baron's Leadership and Loyalty Show, the #1 podcast for Fortune 500 executives and those who are dedicated to creating a quantum leap in leadership. Your host, Dov Baron, is the founder of FullMontyLeadership.com. He's an executive mentor to leaders like you, a contributing writer for Entrepreneur Magazine, CEO World, and he's been featured on CNN, Fox, CBS, and many other notable sites. Dov Baron is an international business speaker who was named by Inc. magazine as one of the top 100 leadership speakers to hire. Now, over to Dov Baron.
Welcome, dear friends, fans, and fellow aficionados of leadership excellence. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Dov Baron's Leadership and Loyalty Tips for Executives, part of the Full Monty interview series. I'm your host, Dov Baron, and I'm here to assist you tapping into the one thing in your business that changes everything. Let me ask you, what do you need to do to up-level your leadership? On this episode, in the context of how you are with your team and those that you do business with, we ask, would you do that to your mother? Stay tuned. Remember, you can now chat about this episode or any of our past episodes inside of our Facebook group. Just go onto Facebook and search Dov Baron's Leadership and Loyalty Podcast. If you're a new listener, new viewer, thank you for joining us. Strap yourself in. We're about to go full Monty. As always, you can find us on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or wherever you tune into podcasts. We are always in need of your help in staying relevant, so please go over to iTunes, rate, review, and please subscribe to the show. When you do, you can go on Facebook and let us know you did, and maybe we'll give you a shout out on a live show. You can also catch us on traditional radio stations across the United States every Monday and Thursday, where you can tap into us all the way from Wisconsin to Florida. Also, you can find us on Roku TV with over 100,000 subscribers. And if you're a regular listener, big thank you to you for making us the #1 podcast globally for Fortune 500 listeners. With a potential reach of 2.5 to 4 million viewers and listeners for every show, we're honored and grateful to be cited by Inc.com as the #1 podcast to make you a better leader. You can also find us on Google Home and Alexa by simply saying, play Dov Baron Podcast. Again, thank you for sharing the show with everybody you know. All right, let's strip it down, dive right in. Whether you are a leader as a CEO, a C-suite leader, a sales leader, a leader in any capacity, you know there are two sets of customers. There's your internal customers and your external customers. Your external customers are the ones who buy from you. Your internal customers are the ones who buy into you, into your organization, and into your culture. The truth is that pretty much everyone thinks that they run a great company and that people are treated well. But how can you be sure? Well, stay tuned because our guest today is Jeanne Bliss. She is a fearless pioneer for customers, harnessing her Italian background, 35 years of experience to improve the lives of customers and employees. Jeanne Bliss pioneered the role as Chief Customer Officer, holding the first ever CCO role for over 20 years at Land's End, Microsoft, Coldwell Banker, Allstate Corporations, where she has driven achievement, listen to this, of 95% loyalty rates. That's pretty amazing. Improving customer experience across 50,000 people organizations, a founder and president of Customer Bliss. She counsels such clients as AAA, Brooks Brothers, Johnson & Johnson, and the U.S. Postal Service, to say just but a few. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and help me welcome Jeanne Bliss. Welcome.
Hello. So good to be with you, Dov. Thank you for having me.
It's our great pleasure. Thank you. You're very welcome. So let's start with, it's the obvious place to start. Let's start with the title of this book.
Yes. Can I hold it up?
Would you, absolutely. Would you do that to your mom? Right? Would you do that to your mother? So tell us that it's a great title, And when you first told me about it, when we chatted originally, I was like, that is good. That made me smile. Tell us how you came up with that and why.
Well, I've been doing this work for 35 years and have seen every derivation of customer focus, TQM, quality, you know, all of it. And I was a practitioner for 25 years, now lead organizations. And what's happening is we're losing the meaning of why we're in business in the first place to the mechanics of doing the work. We get tied up in our silos and our quarterly goals and our purpose and our mission, but it's all about often internal things. And this is a conscience question. It's also a recalibration question. You know, whether you have a mother you love or a good friend's mom you love, right? It's about getting us back on track and saying, look, would you do this to somebody you care about?
Yeah. And you know, but there's something about that, isn't it? I mean, I think it's such a great question, because if I'm asking a leader, would you do that to somebody you care about? You know, it pulls up some conscience, but
mother,
would you do this to your mom? That's a whole different gig. I mean, it's like another, like, okay, that's another level of, okay, my conscience is really involved now.
Well, you're right. And I actually wanted to turn it into something that was very actionable as well, not just a question that you would ask, because it's the story of our lives as customers. Of what we go through in our lives is we interact with employees, we interact with processes, we interact with rules. And so what I wanted to do was to give people a playbook. There's over 80 companies that are profiled and 32 complete case studies with a mom lens, a one-page case study, and a Make Mom Proud-O-meter, which sounds a little dorky, but it's about, well, again, calibrating your behavior. And, you know, we've got to make this more simple and attainable, because customer experience, you know, I'm also the co-founder of the Customer Experience Professionals Association globally. And what's happening, like anything, is when it becomes popular, we tend to inadvertently also overcomplicate it. So this is to get us back to the core of it and give you that playbook to evaluate your life as a customer and your customers' lives.
Yeah, that's actually quite fascinating. I mean, because customer service, you know, you and I know it's very human, but one of the things you talk about in the book is that it's become data driven. That a lot of it is the numbers and how people, you know, and I think that a lot of that stuff is very valuable and very useful, but you're really calling us to come back to the humanity of it, right?
Well, there's got to be a blend of understanding why you're heading in a direction, and then a very deliberateness of how you get there. Intent and motivation, the purpose and the clarity for why you're in business in the first place can tend to get lost in your processes. You know, we get very efficient. For example, in the first chapter, I say, would you roll your mom into a hospital hallway and then leave her there? Well, none of us would do that, but inside hospitals, inside our operations, we create process metrics that are very, very good for our efficiency, but we don't give people the wiggle room to wire their humanity. So, you know, a very well-trained tech would take your mom from her hospital room to the hallway outside of her technical, where the test was going to be done, and leave her there because their job was done.
Yes.
And so there your mom is laying on the hospital, you know, on the gurney. Then the tech comes out of the room, rolls your mom in, may or may not talk to your mom, and puts her back in the hallway where she waits. And that's because processes that we created for our efficiency sometimes inadvertently wire the human out of it. You know, you've probably felt that way as a customer at times as well, right?
That's a very good point, though, right? Efficiency, because at the metrics of efficiency and of cost is, well, you know, if that person waits with her before the technician comes out, that's 5, 10, 15 minutes that they could be more productive somewhere else. Let's get them out of there. But again, as you said, the humanity is missing. The person ends up feeling like they're less valuable. So it's a very good point. And I think it's something that we've So how do we do that? Because I want to get to that, and we're going to recycle that into that. But how do we get to that? Because we are efficiency. We do have to run businesses. We do want businesses to be profitable and effective and efficient.
Sure.
But at the same time, we need the humanity.
That's right.
And one of the things I've spoken about, even on this show, is that in the age of AI, which is what we're in,
right.
what we're beginning in, the need for humanity has gone up, not down.
Totally. Yeah. So this actually comes from the first chapter of the book. And of course, I wrote a book called Would You Do That to Your Mother? So it's, bear with me, momisms. Be the person I raised you to be. What we know is there is a prosperity barometer, not only financial prosperity, but human prosperity, which is when you enable your people to thrive, when you enable them to rise, the connection and the fusing that you will have between your customers and your employees grows. And that grows your business for you. What's on the inside shows up on the outside. Yes. So we inadvertently create policy cops. We inadvertently don't give or trust our front line with all the answers. We don't necessarily provide them with a connection of how their job connects to the higher purpose of the work. And so we're sending people out as technicians. Your note about AI and high tech and high touch is interesting, because what we know is that, yes, if you're lucky, for example, Dove, now you have an app that shows you even when your cable guy will be there. But it's the man, and if he wears booties and how he takes care of your furniture, that shows you the kind of mom he's got, right?
Right.
Yes, when you show up at an airline at that desk about to board a flight, and you're dragging 3 kids behind you and you're exhausted, and the gate agent is able to honor you because she or he themselves have been honored. That's where high tech and high touch have to intersect. And so this chapter identifies the 8 common areas where either employees are pushed down or customers have to do an arm wrestle with your employees that diminishes the spirit of your employees and diminishes how you feel about the company, because you see how their customer is treated. So that chapter gives you 8 case studies. You can take the audit and see where you are in elevating your people immediately.
Yeah, I like the idea of that, being able to reevaluate yourself and audit.
That's right.
One of the things you talked about, even in the intro to the book, is harnessing your Italian background. What does that mean in the context of this?
Well, are you okay?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, good.
A little tickle. There you go.
Yeah. So I grew up, my dad had a Buster Brown shoe store. So my dad's name was Vincenzo Giuseppe Cristando Lombardo. I'm 100% Italian. But
come on. I thought you were Japanese.
Yeah, right.
With a name like that.
I know, right? Yeah. And I married Bliss, right? I go from Lombardo to Bliss, which is kind of crazy unto itself. But here's the deal. My dad was the guy who put the very first pair of shoes on someone's feet. So he took care of the life. We watched him say to young moms, the one with the whiz bang may cost more, but this is the better one. This is the right one to get you on the right path. And this was a man who shooed a generation of children and their children's children. And when he retired, a line of people 3 blocks long stood to say goodbye to him. My mother would stay up all night long making homemade Halloween costumes for my sisters and I. My grandmothers would cook for hours and hours. And so it's, again, everyone has cultural things that fuse them and make them who they are. I'm a giver. I grew up in a culture of giving, and it's just part of who I am. If you come into my house, Dov, and you say, hey, I like that lamp, I'll say, take it. That lamp is yours. And that's how I've grown my business too. It's really giving. You grow through giving. Once I left corporate, my goal has always been just to try to help organizations and leaders find a way to make this work the way that they grow. So I'm a giver.
Yeah, but it's an interesting concept, because we understand, even at a level of psychology and persuasion, the law of reciprocity. And if you give, you get. It's not just some metaphysical idea or some philosophical idea. It's actually a psychological fact. However, giving for the sake of the law of reciprocity is a different thing than
Totally
giving
different.
the generosity of who you are.
Yeah.
And I think that when we as leaders approach our teams from a place of genuine generosity,
That's
when we
right.
approach our teams, when we approach our customers from a place of genuine generosity, the two things can look identical, but I believe with every fiber of my being that the customer and the employee, the team member, knows the difference.
You bet. And that's why there's two things that you struggle to find the words. So phrase number one is leadership bravery. Bravery is important because you've got to, I grew up at Land's End. I worked for Gary Comer, the founder. It gave me my whole career. I called what we did salmon leadership. We did not give the people talk times because they got up in the morning and hayed their fields and plucked eggs from the underbelly of warm hens. We were in the middle of the Wisconsin farmlands, and then we gave them the information to be themselves. That's salmon leadership. We trusted people. So when you have leadership bravery that says, no, we won't do this, we will do that. Yes, we're going to trust our customer. And you prove it to your employees, you breed givers. And out of that breeding of givers becomes people who are givers, but acts how your company shows up. And that earns prosperity and also admiration. I have to say, when you are admired, you grow exponentially because people want to be a part of a company who acts with values that are congruent with their own. I call them congruence of heart and habit, enabling people to act at work the way that we were born and raised, hence the mom thing again.
Exactly.
And not to make it too squishy mushy, because all of these things, that's a very technical term. All of these things have growth attached to them. For every single one of these case studies, you'll see how these companies are number one in their category, have achieved 3 times less employee turnover, are more admired, are more prospered. But I think what you said is so critical because it's the intent and motivation. Our intent is in the right place. It's not about getting, it's about earning. I always coach my folks, you need to earn the right. You can't go get loyalty. You need to earn it. You can't make someone love you.
As much as you might try.
That's right.
And now there's laws against that.
That's right. Well, and what we know, and I don't want to say the word millennial because all of us, I think just in the marketplace now, there is less tolerance for behavior that is not congruent with our own. And
let's talk about that for a minute. Let's talk about what used to be okay and what isn't okay anymore. I think you might be reported to social services or child protective services if you shoved a bar of soap in your kid's mouth because Yet you have a chapter in your book which is don't make me feed you soap. Tell us about that.
Well, what's interesting? I just gave that speech last week, and 90% of the people in the audience were in their 20s. And I start that section and I say, raise your hand if your mom ever threatened to wash your mouth out with soap. And many of them raised their hand.
Really? That's very surprising.
Isn't that insane? Now, I think there's a big threat.
And did you ask them if their parents are now in jail?
I don't think many do it. So soap is so that's the second chapter. Don't make me feed you soap. Again, a play on a mom thing, but that's about getting rid of things that we inadvertently do to customers all of our lives that makes us nuts. Now, nobody goes into their business every day and says, I'm going to make my customer nuts. But
no, of course not.
Especially as we grow and we scale, these things seep in. Waiting, not knowing your name, the black hole of nobody getting back to you, inconsistency, all of these things make us nuts. So I call them soapy moments. So in this chapter are the top 8 things that define our lives as customers. And the other thing I call this is, let's build your respect delivery machine. Do you make customers ever wait for you? Do you ever make customers do you ever give your customers homework, right? You've probably gone through it, whether you're filling out a mortgage application or trying to find your lost luggage or doing any number of things. Companies, again, inadvertently, we give you mom's benefit of the doubt here. We inadvertently make our customers do homework. Oh, well, make these 3 faxes, type this out 5 times, write these 4 letters. What? So it's service exhaustion. And
Right.
guess who we're also exhausting?
Ourselves and our team.
Our people.
Yeah.
Our people who have to do workarounds around these shenanigans that make our customers nuts. So yeah, that's soap, right? And I actually, when I do this keynote, I found a place on Amazon, of course, that sells basil soap. It smells so good. So I throw basil soap into the audience.
Very nice. Now you talk about 6 actions that build make mom proud companies. Talk to us a little bit about those 6 actions. What are those for our viewers, our listeners, so they can sort of get a grasp of what this is as an action? I
may have to go to that page if I can't remember all 6 off the top
Please
of my
do.
head. So first, there's something I call symbolic actions. Now, often one action sets the stage. And it's not a kumbaya action. It's something very deliberate and specific that people can model. For example, the Cleveland Clinic started their huge transformation with something they call the no passing rule, which is no employee, no matter who they are in a hospital, whether you're a doctor, a janitor, a nurse, somebody delivering flowers, you cannot go past a patient's room with the call light on without going in. So now all of our job is to raise and care. Right. So those things set the tone. It says this is real. Hiring is your most important decision. You know, a lot of people, especially as they're growing, they're putting the proverbial, people in seats or backfilling roles. But what's really important is being very clear about your role in customers' lives. Why are you on the planet? What are your values? And do you have a really deliberate way to get to know the human behind the resume? This isn't about skills. It's about, we called it at Land's End, the light behind the eyes. Do you know who that human is? For example, Pal's Sudden Service. This is crazy. It's a hamburger and hot dog stand in Tennessee. They won a Malcolm Baldrige Quality Award. Now, how crazy is that? They put their folks, these are young kids, through a 60-point psychometric survey. One of the things they do to ask them about who they are as people, and the questions are, in general, I feel pretty good about myself. When I need to get attention, I raise my voice. I trust people pretty quickly. And so they want to know about the human. Other things are, a great CEO of a restaurant always takes her executive candidates for breakfast in the morning. You know why?
They'll reveal themselves?
She wants to see how they treat the wait people.
Ah, of course.
So we've got to find hiring practices that put people in their natural element, where you could see what their reactions as humans are. Mm-hmm. And so hiring is the most important decision. I've got to go to that page now. Sorry about that. Thank you for asking that question. Okay. So I got the first 2. Human and mindful actions create joy. What this means is giving people the ability to know that you're a human company. For example, Warby Parker, that's in the book, says, look, you can return your glasses. I think it's within 60 days, even if you sit on them. So it's this wonderful humanity, and you get a giggle out of that. There's lots of other examples all throughout that. Acts of trust are necessary. Every business that was created, or every time we go to a company, it's because we trust a company.
Absolutely.
We trust doctors, we trust realtors, but does the language and the paperwork and the processes say to your customer, we trust you? So do a trust audit. Read every piece of paper, read your policies. Do you have any gotcha moments where your customer, there's fine print that inadvertently plays gotcha with them, and they have to trust you more than you're trusting them?
Yeah, that alone is just a huge point.
That's right.
Because of legalese as well, because of the legality and litigations and possibilities of that. So, I mean, that's got to be something you deal with, Jeanne, yourself, even in working with these companies, is this balancing act between those two things in that, you know, we want to trust the customer, but our legal department says if we do, we could get our ass handed to us, you know, right?
Well, what's interesting is trust given is actually trust received. There's a,
absolutely,
you know, there's a lot of, for example, shifting going on in the healthcare profession. Still a lot of concern about fear and worry and concern. But one of the things that there was actually a coalition around this called the Say Sorry Coalition, where it now enables people to, when things happen that had gone wrong, to say we're sorry to the customer. Now you're trusting that you're being human, and the hospitals that have implemented that have seen their lawsuits reduced dramatically. The Toro lawnmower company hasn't gone to court in many, many years because instead, let's say you mow your toe off with their lawnmower. Instead of starting with a letter of subrogation, which is do A and B and C, and our lawyers will get in charge. You know, somebody visits you and starts with, we're so sorry that you mowed your toe off. And
you dumbass.
Well, they don't say
you
that.
You probably shouldn't be mowing your lawn with no shoes on, but hey, we're sorry that you took your toe off.
Well, and then you go to a bank and the pen is chained to the desk. And in fact, one of the things I did, I was trying to find it, is I hired a cartoonist for the book, and every story starts with a cartoon that kind of identifies all of these different things that, you know, we live in our life as customers. So here's the cartoon. Can you see that?
Yeah.
So there's that
cartoon.
Desk. Yeah, and the point of this is, and the reason those cartoons exist is sometimes one image is enough to get a huddle going to start saying, gosh, do we do anything like that?
Yeah, it's very good. It's powerful. So one of the things, you've mentioned some of the companies, and you did case studies with companies like PepsiCo and
yep.
One of my favorite companies and that I talked about in my book, and Fiercely Loyal, was Patagonia.
Yep.
You also did stuff with Virgin Hotels. When you look at not just those three, but other companies, all of them, so many case studies, is there a certain common thread of correction? Meaning that, you know, they recognize that we used to do this wrong and now we do that. And is there any common thread around that? Because I think that a lot of our behavior as human beings gets better because we recognize we're doing something wrong. And most of the time, most of us are blind to what we're doing wrong until somebody comes up and slaps us upside the head or shoves a bar of soap in our mouth, or there's something to us that makes us go, oh yeah, that's probably not the best thing to do.
Well, I think there's a couple things. And, you know, as an organization, you have to be open to continuing to see and recognize that things are going to go wrong. And it's not about defending, but listening. So, for example, the Four Seasons Hotel, after every single shift, they do something they call a glitch report, where they huddle everyone together. And here's what's critical about this is that they don't talk about the who, they talk about the why. And so they let the person, even if it happened on their watch, not be punitively, you know, identified, but rather let's talk about the root cause so they can go back and rise. You know, REI, one of my favorite stories in the book, you mentioned Patagonia. I mean, Patagonia does this thing where they go around to college students and repair all their clothes because they know they have to get more money out of them. That's genius. REI decided about 5 years ago now, I think it was, that they had been open on Black Friday. And if they are a company that's all about outdoors and being outdoors, the day after Thanksgiving should be family. So they now shutter their business. The internet is not closed, but there's a black screen over it that you have to deliberately click on. So that clarity, united with that action, says to the marketplace as well as their employees, look, this is who we are. This is why we're in business. And exponentially what happens is that they are growing as a result of it. Absolutely. So it's this paradoxical growth, right, that it's like people say you can't grow that way. Well, you can grow when you do the right thing. You do grow. And again, this is not kumbaya. This is about choosing how you will grow. And the other thing that I'm really coaching leaders on is what's your set of non-negotiables? What won't you ever do to get a nickel in your pocket?
Yeah.
And and that's really what's all the way through this.
Yeah, we do that same work around purpose, and part of finding your purpose is knowing what your non-negotiables are.
Yeah.
Because people will say this is non-negotiable, and I'll say, well, what about if this happened? Oh, well, then I guess we
never
then
mind.
it's not non-negotiable.
That's right.
Non-negotiable means it is non-negotiable with a gun to your head. That's what it is.
Well, and you've got it, and the leadership team has to take behaviors and then market it back to the organization to say, we did this, you can do it too. We have to give people permission to model that behavior and proof, the prove it to me of it all is again, the other thread that's through this is that your organization prospers if they have enough examples to propagate it and own it on their own.
Absolutely. Now, this is obviously what you do. It's what you do with companies and with organizations and with teams. This is not work, is it, for you?
I love it. I mean, I'm still working for 35 years. It's my avocation. I think that if at some point I'm going to want to do this for nonprofits because these are gifts, and it's when I went from my dad's little Buster Brown shoe store to Land's End, it was like finding a place where how he behaved as a business, I could do in a much larger setting. And so my goal throughout my whole career has been about helping people find that lightning in a bottle, find a way of operating that really does say, here's who we are as people, and here's how we value things, and our operating behavior and our human behavior lines up with that.
But that's the argument, isn't it, Jeanne? That's the trick. That very often, I think when I say trick, I mean as in we trick ourselves. We say, yeah, but that's great because there's only 4 people work there. You guys can do that. But we have 400, we have 4,000, we have 40,000 people. We can't quite do that. We have to run on data. We have to run on systems and organization and to the letter legalese. What do you, and you've worked with many of these big companies. What do you say when you bump up against that?
Well, again, you do need process, you do need systems, but you also need to recognize that you can wire in deliberate responses. So a lot of this is about being proactive. For example, Alaska Airlines has something they built called a We Trust You Toolkit. Now, what this is they brought their people together, and all of your organizations can do this, no matter how big you are. I bet you can get 10 people in a room, 20, however many you want to include, and in about an hour identify the top 5 reasons why your customers need exceptions or have vulnerable moments where things fall apart. So in airlines, we know the certain things. Your flight is delayed, it's canceled, you didn't make your connection, or the positive things, you're having an anniversary, whatever. They actually created a mobile app where, as an employee, you connect with the customer first. You decide, you determine what exception or what human gesture is, and then you have an app that lets you take those actions. So Fantastic. This is not about giving away money willy-nilly, but about proactively recognizing that things are going to happen inside of your business that require the brains of the people who you hired to make a call. And so This is what I call, letting policy and the golden rule collide. But If you're not proactive about it, it is going to be expensive. It is going to be something where people take the right act, but then are punitively have their hand slaps because they're not given the right opportunity because you haven't thought about it. And so much of this is thinking, angsting, deciding, and then trusting because you hire the right people and you put tools in their hands to make good judgments.
Absolutely. Now, you spoke about being brave in leadership. I believe that real leadership does require courage. What is the most difficult leadership decision you've ever had to make? Or what's one of the most brave leadership decisions you've had to make?
Probably leaving a company that I was in a role for was, and again, bravery in terms of deciding that it wasn't a company that I could make impact on because they weren't as committed to, they said they were committed, but the actions weren't committed. I think letting people go that aren't really suited for an organization, and then shutting things down. I once shut a $25 million project down because we were misaligned before we I inherited it. And, you know, I wasn't very popular for that because there were a lot of people who were being paid a lot of money, and there were a lot of reputations at stake. But finding a way to do that where you honor the past to move forward with the future, I think that's challenging. So I think it's really these three things. Are you in an environment that is congruent with who you are? And do you know when to, I say, pick up your marbles and go? Are you able to recognize when you need to help someone to another place? And are you able to turn something off or help the organization recognize what you won't do? Because it's just not going to get you where you need to go. And that's bravery.
Yeah, I think personal courage is grossly underrated, but I think that people mix up personal courage with arrogance, and I think you've just got to really know who you are.
Yeah.
And as we talked about earlier, you got to know what's non-negotiable for you as an individual,
yes,
as well as an organization, and be willing to live by that. Unfortunately, we see more and more of that not being the case. So we're seeing that in politics where, you know, we're all against this person and now this person has power, so we're all with this person. Well, you know what? You got all the integrity of a wet tissue. It's like, you know, like that, what is truly non-negotiable? And the more that we negotiate what we say is non-negotiable, then the more we show our lack of integrity, and why the hell should anybody believe in us?
That's right. Well, and it blows away from there. You know, I think that the biggest, our responsibility inside of organizations is to be really clear about what we are, what our purpose is. You know, why would people, how do you want to be remembered? Right. You know, and then find a way to build your behavior and your operating plan that delivers that. But we don't have those. We don't spend enough time angsting about that stuff in the first place. And that's why we're doing workarounds and our people are exhausted and we've got people calling or chatting, not knowing what's happening because we're working separately. You know, I've done a lot of work with organizations. We've got silos. They're great organizations. People are set up to do a set of things, but that set of things may be inward focused, may not connect to the rest of it. And we're not starting with the customer goal. Often we're starting with our internal things. And that's where this work changes too. The starting point is different. You know, again, the paradox is if you start with your customer's goals, you're going to find a faster way to achieve your own.
Yeah, it's an old adage, but it's absolutely true.
Yeah, that's what that third chapter is about. What? Sorry, I'm sorry.
Focus on making other people happy. Focus on helping other people reach their goals, and you will inadvertently reach your own. It's so old, but it's so solid and true.
That's right. Go ahead.
You mentioned your dad. You mentioned your background. In what ways did your childhood shape your life/leadership philosophy?
Well, you know, we had a pretty normal. You know, my dad had one Buster Brown shoe store and 7 kids, so do the math. We were, you know, we were babysitting and doing everything we had to do at the age of 11 to basically stand up for ourselves, you know, be self-sufficient as much as we needed. But again, I had this Italian heritage, and I also had, I remember we were, do you remember when the Apollo mission started and they landed on the moon? I never know what year that was.
1969, I believe.
1969. Okay, so I was 10. I was born in 59. So I remember we were out. I said this in front of a crowd of kids, the youngers, the other day, and I said we had the TV out in the backyard, and we had aluminum foil and a hanger, for, trying. They're like, "What?" They
Exactly.
to watch the moon landing.
Creating rabbit ears.
Yes. All the old people understand it. But we were also we did everything. We washed the cars, we did everything. And the moon landing had just happened. We were washing the Woody station wagon, and I was talking to my mom, and I said, and she said, Jeanne, you could be an astronaut if you want. And what's interesting is from then on, I didn't think I couldn't do, there was no glass ceiling to me. If, when I was going up inside of organizations, I thought, there's going to be VPs. Why not me? There's going to be this and that. I will just work hard. And there was also at some point when I was in high school where I realized, it takes an attitude shift and a little more work to get an A, but it's not, it's about knowing and putting the extra effort in, and then not being afraid to be yourself. I am Popeye, I snort when I laugh. I see, there it is. Didn't do that on purpose. It just happens. I think that being in an environment where you're able to fail, but also told that, there's no limit. It was pretty important to me. And I've just always been a very driven person. Can you tell?
But it's interesting because everything you just talked about that childhood clearly shows up in the work that you're doing. It's perfectly aligned. Absolutely. It's totally aligned. Yeah. Now, as a leader, particularly as conscious leaders who are committed to our growth, one of the things I like to bring up in the show is that I think that people listen to these kinds of shows and think, well, that's great, that's you, but I could never be that. And they often underestimate themselves. So one of the things I like to ask the leaders that I interview is, what's one thing that you're still working on within yourself? One thing that that's very personal, that, hey, I'm trying to become better at this. I'm trying to be more awakened, more conscious, more, quote, woke around that kind of thing. What is something you're working on?
I always have to slow myself down because my brain is doing this. So, and live in the moment. I have a podcast show as well. And I have to, I've now made big thing that I put up, which just says, be quiet and listen, so that I want to hear people's stories. When I show up as talking over them, it's not because I'm a rude person, because I'm not. It's because I'm getting to the next thing. So slowing down, living in the moment, enjoying the moment, absorbing the moment, and choosing the moment. And that is something I have to work on very constantly.
Thank you very much for sharing that. That's really important. I think it's something we could all do with a lot more of in a world where we're so damn busy all the time that we're always thinking about what's next as opposed to being present with what is. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Well, and we're living through our phones. I say to my husband, put the phone down. So now we have a pact that he can't pick up his phone at dinner. It's crazy. Put your phone down. We're together. Just, and we all do that.
Look,
and then I go to the bathroom and I see he picks up his phone, and it's like, leave it.
We are so addicted. It's insane. What brings you joy?
Helping, eating.
What's a guilty pleasure for you?
Stuffed artichokes.
Really?
Oh my gosh.
That's interesting.
Well, so first of all, and bread and butter. I don't eat carbs very much anymore, but my grandma made them. So you steam the artichoke, and then you, and as you're steaming them, you cut up a lemon and you stick a piece of lemon inside every leaf. And then simultaneously, you're whipping up olive oil, garlic, butter, parsley, and breadcrumbs, and salt and pepper. And then you stuff every leaf with that stuff. And so by the time the artichoke comes out, this little artichoke that was like this is this fat, filled with breadcrumbs and olive oil. And oh yeah, that's my last meal. That and bread and butter.
Okay, I can die now.
Right. I'm going to have a heart attack anyway, so there you go.
You're going to have a heart attack. This is the way to do it.
That's right. That's right.
So as we come towards the end of the show, Jeanne, I just want to thank you. But before I get to that, it's always my focus to make sure that at the end of a show, the people watching, listening, are not just going, "Oh, that was a good podcast thing, on to the next thing." It's easy to do that. I would love for you to share with our viewers, with our listeners, a practical piece of advice, a practical piece of guidance, something that they can take and actually do, preferably in the next 24 hours, even sooner, but certainly in the next working week. What's something you would guide them to do?
Bring your employees together and ask them what stupid rules are getting in the way of their delivering value. Things that on a regular basis they have to do workarounds on, and do a trust audit with them.
That is so simple, so powerful. Wow, that is great. That is so good. Thank you so much for that. That's awesome. Listen, it's been a real pleasure and honor having you with us. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your kindness and your insights. Please tell our viewers, our listeners, where they can find out more about you and all the wonderful resources that you offer.
Fantastic. So I mentioned I married a guy named Bliss, so I have an easy URL, customerbliss.com. And if you want to reach out to me on Twitter, I respond. It's at Jeanne, Jeanne, Bliss, at Jeanne Bliss. But yeah, I would love to hear from you guys. I have lots of material and resources, and just keep on giving. So thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure to talk to you, Dov.
It's been an honor. Thank you. I hope you'll stay with us to the end. And I hope to you, dear listener, that, again, as always, information is worth the hole in a donut. Transformation comes from application. So get over to customerbliss.com, tap into the resources, listen and watch the show again, take some notes, decide on some actions, and certainly do that practical action right away. To hang out with other conscious leaders and chat about this show that you've been listening to or past episodes, you can go onto Facebook and find our podcast there and our chat, our group there, Dov Baron Leadership and Loyalty Podcast. To find out more about how you can hire me, Dov Baron, as a speaker or strategist for your organization, simply go to fullmontyleadership.com/consulting, or if you want to bring me in as a speaker, fullmontyleadership.com/speaking. Pretty easy. Be aware that the research consistently shows that the fastest growing companies often face the same challenge, a challenge you would not expect, that they're spending a fortune training and developing top talent, and they have these talent leaving at an alarming rate. If you're sick of investing in the training and development of your talent, only have them leave before you get your ROI, then come talk to us at fullmontyleadership.com, where we provide you with the essential leadership skills to rekindle and amplify the hidden loyalty assets inside of your organization by tapping into purpose. fullmontyleadership.com. Why? Because you can't outsource authenticity. You can also remember to stop by the Matrix, matrix.fullmontyleadership.com, and get your authentic leadership matrix self-assessment tool. It's valued at $197. It's absolutely free to you. Just go to Matrix, you don't need a www, matrix.fullmontyleadership.com. I want to thank you for sharing the show with everybody you know. Till next time, stay curious, my friend. Stay curious about whether you would actually treat your mom that way. Whatever it is you're doing in business. I'm Dov Baron. I'm here to assist you tapping into your deep greatness to reach that next level of clarity, focus, purpose, and profit in your business, your life, and your leadership impact. And I am out.